Hi, this is Steve Stott. This is also Keep the Ghost Light On with Robin Frome, presented by the Sherman Playhouse. So tonight we have lovely guests. We've got Bradford Blake, Brad Blake, who is well known in our local Connecticut area, musician, composer, actor, director, and everyone's favorite uncle. We have Martin Casella, playwright and educator, and much more I'm sure we'll hear. And we have Jessica Granger, TV and film writer and producer. And again, we're here to talk all about them and the current situation with COVID and everything else going on. Before I hand over to Robin, a couple of things that we've noticed this week. We have heard that in the US, Broadway in New York remains closed with no real sign of reopening yet, while the West End in London is already starting to announce at least plans to open up, I think, in the spring with one or two of those shows which were held back by the onset of COVID. The other thing that's of interest here in our home Connecticut, we've just had the phase 3 of our COVID reopening plan announced by the governor, and that should allow theatres to open up with a little higher capacity. May not have much of an impact on the smaller houses, smaller local houses that can't accommodate as many people with distancing, but on maybe some of the larger auditoriums, it might allow them to put a few shows on. We may well touch on this as we go through the show. So, without more ado, over to Robin to introduce our guests. And
okay, we're going to go first with Mr. Brad Blake. Good evening, Brad.
How are you, Robin?
I'm doing well still. Last year around this time, we were in knee deep in cabaret, as it were. And
open by now, yeah.
Yeah, open by now. Great production. The first time I've worked with you, and over at Sherman Playhouse, and that was a wonderful experience. You stepped in at the last minute for our lead, which was a wonderful experience and a wonderful coup that happened. But you both were wonderful. But you know, your reputation precedes yourself, and you know, I'd like you to talk a little bit about your history in the performing arts. I interviewed you for Inside the Sherman Playhouse, but you don't have to do that lengthy of a history. And then how COVID has affected you. And Steve and I have been doing this for a little while, and there's been so much, not that you have to follow this this line, but there's been so much, in a way, a positive spin on things as far as what we can do, you know, outside the regular stuff that we were doing before. And then there has been, you know, negative as well. So it's interesting to see both sides of it. But anyway, you may have a different take on it, so take it away.
Well, I'm going to actually pick up right there. I mean, I think that you're right. There are a lot of positive things that have come out of it. I think we've all learned by the situation to think outside the box and discover new ways to use the entertainment industry and just these Zoom performances and meetings and panel discussions have been quite interesting, and I think there's a lot more forgiveness given during these things, because everyone knows we're all sort of flying by the seat of our pants. Some of us are a little more technically gifted than others, but I miss being in rehearsal. I really miss. I mean, I've been doing a lot of writing. I've been writing since this whole thing started. I've been working from home with my day job since the second week of March. And at 5 o'clock, I move one computer over and open up the other computer and go right to work writing. And it's The interesting thing is not having a deadline for a show opening or a production, an upcoming production, has lifted a lot of the barriers to writing. I feel like I've been a lot freer and have heard a sentence or a phrase that have inspired me to write something. Not that it's all good, mind you, but it's writing, and I feel like I've been more actively pursuing my writing since this whole lockdown. I started as a performer who happened to play piano and was musically self-taught and knowledgeable. So I would often become a rehearsal pianist for shows I was doing. Even when I was doing professional work, I would step in and play for extra rehearsals, help other performers with their harmonies, and then developed my arranging skills from that, and started directing, choreographing, musical directing. But through all this, what I've enjoyed the most, what I've gotten the most personal satisfaction out of, is the writing. And my genre that I feel very passionate about is musical review. I love musical review because every song, every sketch is its own mini play with a beginning and an end, and it's really lovely. I enjoy that from a writing point of view. Apparently, the audiences who have seen my work have enjoyed that as well, because I think the nicest thing is, I'm sure Marty and Jessica can understand that the great thing about it is, if someone doesn't like one song, then there's another one right around the corner that they can either relate to or enjoy. And I have not tried my hand at a full scripted musical theater piece. I find lyrics and music come much easier to me. Dialogue is a little more of a struggle for me. So I'm sure I will eventually go that route and see what happens. And ask me something. That's what I got right now.
No, that's great.
Yeah.
What's interesting is when you were talking about time to plan, time to write, and time to plan. We were talking a couple weeks, and then the week after that, with a few people, about the fact that we have never experienced the phenomenon of not thinking about the next show. And I know when we were doing cabaret, you were already in smorgasbord land,
Right.
thinking about that show.
Writing that and in rehearsal for Wreck the Halls, right? I had 3.
Right. And so and I think we really, we'll appreciate it a lot more when we get to do that again. But I think we were just like, it was always something that, okay, this will be good, and then we'll get the next one and next one. And we've heard from some professionals that they enjoyed the time off, not to put their brains into something else, even when they're doing, something at the time, always thinking about the future, always thinking about the future show, especially when you're an artistic director of a theater. You're like, okay, well, now what's next and what's next? When are we going to audition for that? And then, oh, that show's going on, we're auditioning. You do this at Richter all the time, so I think it's been I've been writing too, and it's been an interesting break to do that. Do you feel, Brad, that the time that you have now is infusing that? It's making it a better experience, more time to do it?
Well, I like I said, I don't think that the pressure is there of a timeline. And so I've actually, in the last 2 weeks, I've written a number of songs for existing pieces, Wreck the Halls and Smorgasbord. I haven't moved on to something new yet, because I've been waiting for that divine inspiration to hit me over the head like a prop bottle. And but I find that I'm going back, I'm writing something and then going back and saying, oh, no, 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 that's the wrong preposition, you know, and just really just like fine tuning it a lot, which is great. It's lovely to have that luxury. You were talking about the 3 shows I had in a row. As soon as Smorgasbord opened, I said, when this sucker closes, I am taking a break.
So it's all your fault.
I did.
So it's all Brad Blake's fault.
It is.
There we
It's
go.
my fault, folks.
No, but I mean, you do work terribly hard when you're involved in a show, and when you've got those shows on the go. You really commit, and you really expect your cast and crew to commit as well to a show. I've noticed that.
Well, you know,
that I've been involved in.
if you ever read my bios in the programs, I always leave with the line that I feel that my greatest talent is surrounding myself with wonderful and talented people, you know, nice and talented people. And because of that, because I like to do that, you have a responsibility to them to make sure that you give back what they're giving to you. And, you know, I feel that as the director, and I'm usually director and choreographer and at least set designer, if not sometimes costume designer, and, you know, sometimes vocal director as well. Sometimes, you know, I'm just a glutton for punishment. But it's one of me against, you know, however many people are in that cast and that crew that I feel responsible for. So yeah, I do really try to give it my all, because there's no, you can't expect other people to give their all if you don't.
Absolutely. I think one of the things we might touch on as we go through this evening is really talking about the impact of the current situation on all those other people, the people who aren't necessarily in a position to take the time to create, you take the downtime to create,
Right.
and also the ones who, you know, as kind of leaders in what you do, you know, the people you're responsible for as well, and how you know, how they may be helped in this situation. But well, thanks very much, Brad. Stay on, because don't go anywhere, because we'll continue this discussion in a short while. Back over to Robin to talk about our next guest.
Yeah, I haven't used this metaphor. Move down the couch, right? In the talk show. Stay on the couch, Brad.
Am I sitting next to Ed McMahon now?
Yeah. Anyway, Marty, how are you?
Oh, you're on mute, Marty.
There we go.
There you are.
There we go.
There we go. I'm well. As I had been a resident of New York for a very long time, and about 2 years ago, I moved back to Los Angeles, where I'm originally from, and helping out with my family here, and I'm looking after my parents, and boy, it's a little easier for writers. I have so many friends in New York and in theaters across the country who are, you know, figuring out what they want to do, how they're going to do it, both on the theater owners, the producers, and actors and designers and stage managers, everybody. And those of us who are writers, as you were just describing, Brad, you can actually, my life hasn't changed that much. I don't know how your life is, Jessica, but as a writer, I've been a professional writer for almost 40 years now. And life for me is different in that I, you know, have to wear a mask when I go outside and deal with a couple family members who've had COVID and a lot of friends. And yet, in terms of my work, I still spend a lot of time by myself in my writing room. And everybody else, what do you do? And it's like, in the beginning, it was tough. I had several plays. Robin, several years ago, had directed a production of my play, The Irish Curse, which is a play of mine that's been done all over the world. And we were still going strong with productions, and suddenly it's a little, I suddenly understood what everybody else was going through when I had 4 productions of the play that were going to be done this year canceled. And then a play that I had written that had been accepted into a really big festival. That was one of 8 plays, one of those sort of bake-off things where one theater invites 8 plays to come and have, do a stage reading, and then they promise one of the plays a production. I had been chosen for one of those I'm sort of inching my way back into LA theater, which I had done a lot of in the 80s here with a theater company that a bunch of us who went to CalArts together created. And so I'm sort of working my way back into the community here, the theater community, and I was very happy to have discovered a new play of mine had been chosen to be in one of those bake-off sort of things. And then the whole thing just went away basically overnight. And it's been tough. Another play of mine that was that's been optioned for a couple years to be done in New York. The producer finally called me a couple weeks ago and said, well, how would you feel? Would you think about maybe turning this into a movie? Because in America, we're not probably going to go back to doing theater for a while. Probably next spring, maybe, or next fall. And that was a big change. It was a play that he'd been working on. He's got a theater director attached, Tony nominated director, and has a big actress interested in doing it. And all of a sudden, it's just on hold. And so I have spent the last few months focusing on getting back. When I lived in LA in the 80s, I had a pretty decent film career. I wrote a lot of films. In LA, you can make a career out of writing films that never get made. They pay you, and it's a nice way to make a living. But so what I've been focusing on the last few months, in addition to sort of hanging out, spending a lot of time with my parents, having been away for 25 years, out of the blue, I've been getting calls about doing film work, which, as I said, I had done a lot of, but suddenly people know that even writers have a lot of free time. And so I've been very lucky, really, really lucky. Like when people go on award shows and go, I feel blessed about this. And I've had been offered 3 film rewrites in the last couple of weeks, which is fantastic. And it's going to help pay some bills because, along with everybody else, it was hard for the last 6 months not to have any income at all from royalties, residuals, writing jobs, anything. So just in the last month and a half, I'd say, things have sort of perked up just from a writer's point of view and gotten a little better. And actually this morning, one of the film rewrites that I had been hired to do, I turned it in. So all those feelings are all suddenly back. I'm not just working in my office anymore, as I have been doing for the past, 6.5, 7 months. I actually had to turn a script into a producer this morning, and I'm assuming we'll get notes in a couple days. So that's where I am. That's what I'm doing. And been working really hard. My nephew is a doctor at UCLA, and he got sick with COVID at the very beginning, and he was very ill. He's much, much better now. He's one of the ones that's 30 years old and very, very healthy, and he was very sick. At one point was about an hour away from being intubated by his own staff at the hospital. And so one of the things I've been spending a lot of time in the last 7 months doing is trying to make sure people understand, as has my nephew on social media and very publicly with the permission of UCLA where he works, is to make people understand, even now, 7 months later, after everything we've been through, that this is a real thing, that it exists. And that's become a real important thing to me. I almost lost my nephew. It was a very hard time for my entire family, and especially my sister and her husband, and my parents, who are, their grandson they have 2, and one, they're both their pride and joys. And so that's what I've been doing, Robin. That's
okay.
That's
I'm so encouraged by I'm encouraged by your what's been happening lately. Sorry, I'm getting some feedback here. About what's been happening lately to you, Marty, and that's great. Any time in the past that this has been an issue? I know we never had this before, but have there been dry spells that you've gotten back into the groove? The only reason I'm bringing this up is that hopefully everybody in the business, in one way or another, in the performing arts writing, is not dropping it and saying, shit, let's just not do this anymore.
Anybody, anybody who works in the theater or film in any kind of entertainment industry always goes through those periods where you just go, oh, I'm dead in the water. I'm never going to work again, ever. And a friend of mine, a very, very close friend of mine that I've known for a long time, she laughed at me the other day and she said, oh, come on. There was that period when absolutely nothing happened for a year.
Yep.
And then all of a sudden, as probably we've all discovered or had experienced, is that as soon as somebody knows that you're working again, you mention something, and the next thing, 2 days later, open 2 more emails, and oh, we're here. You hear you're back to work, or would you be interested? So, yeah. Oh no, I actually, interestingly enough, Robin, I didn't call it writer's block, but I kind of hit a wall last year. I kind of just thought. Probably about a year ago, this past spring in 2019, I kind of thought, nobody's going to do my stuff anymore. I don't, there's a lot of there's younger people coming up. Great. Let's let them write. Let's let them tell their stories. And I didn't write for a year. I took a year off and I focused on helping out with my family. I have elderly parents, and I did that, and I took some day work, helping a woman who has she has a branding business, and she had me, coming up with ideas for her, and it was great to get away from all that for a while. And yeah, it happens. It happens. We have those time periods where I think anybody who's a creative person, you got to have that fallow feel period. You have to, just because otherwise you get wiped out, you get exhausted. And
yeah, I guess the difference really is between taking the option to take some time away and having to take some time away, because everything else goes flat. It's a little different being on vacation to living there, as it were. But I'm sorry to hear about the troubles your nephew has had, and I'm really pleased for you and your family that he's come through.
Thanks.
Just on that, and this probably goes for everybody who's writing. How much of this experience do you think will carry through into your writing, either subject matter or style or analogies? Do you find your experiences tend to inform what you write, or is it more imagination and research?
I'll jump in there real quick and answer that. When I started writing again, was I basically using my nephew's story of what happened to him. Right. A local theater here asked me if I would represent them in a play festival, and I wrote a 10-minute play about a young doctor at a hospital who is just before he's set to go home from his 30-hour shift, he gets a phone call that he has to intubate a young woman who's in her 20s. Right. And it's a very short 12-minute play about what he goes through and how he has to reach out to her family members and explain to her what's going on. And I had not written anything of my own for a year. And when I sat down, that thing just poured out of me. I interviewed my nephew for about 3 hours, and it happened. And after I wrote that, suddenly the dam broke finally after a year.
Yeah, again, what we've heard is, lots of people are creating now, and it, I think it'll be interesting to see what's happening now. Not just what's happening with COVID, but all the stuff that was leading up to COVID, with all the social justice movements. Just things were happening, things were changing, the political situation, and just how all that will carry through into writing, and that we're likely to see, as you say, the dam burst with a lot of creativity. I'm sure there'll be a lot of flotsam and jetsam that'll drift off into the distance, but it'll be interesting to see what comes out of this that really hits the mark. So thank you very much, Marty. Again, stay on the couch, snuggle up next to Robin and Brad, and we'll move on. So Robin, back over to you. You're probably on mute at the moment, so I muted you so that Phoebe wouldn't bother us. Phoebe's a dog, by the way, not.
Was my dog barking? Okay. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay. All right. I am wearing underarm deodorant, so move on down to the couch. So Jessica, how are you tonight?
I'm fine, thanks.
It's great to finally see you face to face. We just met, just a little brief intro here. We met on the phone because you were casting a production very locally around Lake Candlewood Lake, where you have another home. And you were asking me for some people to audition for it. And we got to talking, and I said, we're starting, I think it was July, we're starting this Keep the Ghost Light On, and I'm booking you. So you just have to do it. And so at the time I was like, that's cool. Can you do this? That type of thing. But it's great to have met you and see your bio. If you can just tell us a little bit about yourself, how you got into the business, and how this pandemic has affected you. And yeah, go right ahead.
Well, I guess it really all started in the Sherman Playhouse. When my mother was the president, it was her way of meeting people when we first moved to Sherman. And I was in the green room, and I must have sort of absorbed more than I realized. And I ended up going to film school in USC in California, which is where I settled more or less for the last, 12 years. I've been back now since the start of COVID. I ran home and I haven't returned to LA. I still have the same clothes I packed in one suitcase when I thought quarantine would be 2 weeks long. Lots of bad shopping since then. So I sort of took a traditional route in that I went to film school, and then I was an assistant at Creative Artists Agency, a major talent agency. I did a year there so that I could find a showrunner they represented and become that showrunner's assistant. I ended up working for Peter Lenkov, who ran Hawaii Five-0 and was recently outed for his toxic workplace, which was a long time coming, but I survived him. And I left after a year of working for him and writing an episode to develop my own TV projects. And then my father got sick, so I came home to be close to him. And I was home east, I should say, in New York for about 2 years. And at the end of 2 years, a friend of mine from LA called me. He was a writer on Hawaii Five-0, and he had a new show coming on CBS called God Friended Me. And he said, Jessica, it's time you come back to LA and get on with your life. You've been close to home for long enough. So he hired me to write on his show. And I did that for 2 seasons. And even though I was sort of wanting to be East, the show was writing in LA and shooting in Brooklyn primarily. And I ended up being sort of the person who went back to cover set the most. And so I've been really back and forth the last 2 years. But the show, it got pretty good ratings, but I think that COVID really was a nail in a coffin for the show, because we depended largely on international sales of the show, which all stopped as soon as COVID hit. So we wrapped up the season in, I believe, February. So I've been, I guess, freelancing, which is a nice way of saying unemployed, since the show ended. And I, at the very beginning of the pandemic, when I was feeling really sort of less down on the world and scared, I wrote this film called Candlewood, based on my childhood here, set in 1992. And I was dead set on filming it and actually making it in this year, which is kind of crazy, but I don't know, I didn't know, I felt like I needed something to focus on and to do and to make and to create. And I was thinking, like, you know, and my partner is a director, and I'm so sorry. And she, I need to bring the dog into frame. And we have all these friends, and we thought that, you know, nobody's working, everyone wants to help, and we can all quarantine in Connecticut and make this film. And so then I called Robin, and I was, you know, we were doing local casting, and we got a producer, and the producer said, this is all great, but you're crazy. Let's do a good job of this, and let's do it next year. And COVID is increasing budgets by 40% on indie films, approximately. And, you know, this is the first, I normally write TV. This is the first feature for me. And it's important that we keep costs as low as possible, because as the producer said to us, you know, the important thing for your first film especially is to make sure that you spend as little as possible so that you have your best chance of being profitable at the end, which then creates, you know, good relationships with financiers. So the project is very much moving forward for June of 2021. And now I'm looking forward to June instead of, you know, I don't know, I was hoping to shoot September of this year, which is what we would have just wrapped on my dream, but that's okay. And that's really my summary. And this is Finch. She's I don't know, she gets spooked at night, so.
Hello, Finch.
Finch.
Hello,
Finch.
So,
Yes, there's always a Zoom dog. I would have put money on it being one of Robin's. He knows which one I'm talking about as well.
she's eating the couch right now.
There we go. We're very happy to meet Finch. So Jessica, I think of a lot of the people who we've had on the show. You have been very specifically affected in a very major way as far as the production you were working on, as you say, the final nail in the coffin, and the effect on foreign markets of being able to sell that kind of stuff. So you're quite as it were, an example of the actual disruption in a young career. Not that you're not young anymore, Brad or Martin, but it's fascinating to see how that's affecting you. And I wonder if now that you have a project to look forward to. Clearly, we don't really know when everything's going to clear up, but you've got that project to look forward to now. Is that now giving you any comfort to know that that's in the future? Is it giving you the opportunity to sit back and do more creative things, or do you feel like you really just want to be getting on with it?
I would say that I'm really impressed, Brad and Marty, by, it seems to me, or it sounds like you both, especially the idea of starting to write your own personal work at 5 p.m. I'm lucky if I get 4 hours a day of writing, and that is, I think, largely a result of me feeling exhausted by the upcoming election and my fears and my concerns about when writers' rooms will open back up and when productions will be safe again. And I would say that Candlewood and in sort of the idea of having a producer and we're going to go out to cast, you know, for the leads, hopefully in a week or two. That all is really keeping me going, and forces me. I now have deadlines for that, which is helpful. But in Hollywood, especially, I think that there was, it wasn't just COVID and sort of how that has, the confluence of which has sort of changed the hiring game, which I'm all for. But this strange thing has happened, and I don't even know if I'm really answering your question, but the strange thing has happened where rooms are now smaller because they're over Zoom. And a lot of TV shows didn't shoot their pilots, which is normally what decides which shows go to series. So because they didn't shoot pilots, the networks have just ordered the showrunners to write, you know, an additional 4 scripts. And then they'll decide, instead of shooting the pilot, which are the best shows that they want to pick up based on how good the first 4 scripts are. So they're starting things called mini rooms, and mini rooms, as I've learned, are everyone gets paid the same rate, which is a high rate, which is above my pay grade. And so in wanting the best bang for their buck for these mini rooms, they're hiring above my level. But it's sort of this strange thing where I sort of have no choice but to, it's my long way of saying, I have no choice but to write my own stuff because it doesn't really feel like I will return to being staffed on a show until things start to normalize again, whatever that means. So yeah, the motivation to work on my own work, my own writing is certainly there because it has to be. And it's also, you know, some days I wake up and all I can think about is, you know, the President Trump and the signs I see around here.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Yeah.
And you know, I absolutely understand where you're coming from. It's very difficult to block out the news, the social media feeds, and the events that are going on. And you know, I would have thought that you know, that can either feed creativity, or it can stifle it.
Yeah.
Because of, and finding the trigger, finding which way that's going to go is going to be the trick.
And one thing I wanted to add, because I was reminded of this when you asked earlier, if, you know, the current events have affected our writing in any way. And by the way, Marty, I'm so glad to hear that your nephew has pulled through and that he's doing better. And I'm glad that you were able to sort of break the, you know, open the dam or break the dam as a result. But I have been hearing of this thing, you know, with agents and producers. They're calling and they're saying, do you have any ideas that are COVID proof? And I'm like, I'm sorry, like, what does that mean? And they're like, oh, well, don't worry, Candlewood is COVID proof. It's set in 1992. So nobody has any idea this global pandemic's going to hit. But, you know, outside of that, think futuristic or think alternate reality or think period, but not 2 period because that'll get too expensive. And, you know, there's this COVID proof is now a thing because nobody knows how to deal with it in at least on television screens. And does anyone really want to watch that even? You know, we've had enough of masks, I think. Do we want to...
That's interesting, because I mean, that's the first time, I think that's the first time anybody sort of mentioned that as we've been going through these series about you know, COVID proof, or looking for stuff which isn't of the moment. You know, and I guess, you know, the length of time it might take to get something out of the door. If you're talking about masks and you're talking about COVID, it's not current anymore. you know. So I can understand that.
Steve, am I muted?
No, you're not muted. You're right. You're right on.
I'm on. All right. Yeah. So just to go on that subject, Jessica, about that COVID proof. That's interesting. I can see them doing that, though. I remember 9/11. You know, they were going to do, you know, no more productions about, or I'm sorry, films, you know, for a long time about destruction of a building or terrorists and stuff like that. It just wasn't, nobody wanted to see it. Nobody, you know, and I remember there was a play written by a friend of, directed by a friend of mine called The Guys. And The Guys took place in New York City. Well, it took place basically centered around a therapist and a guy that was in 9/11 doing the firefighting. And but they did it at the Playhouse, and it was really not very well attended. Really good play, got great people in it, not well attended, and so we kind of got the idea. But that was 5 years later, even. So it's interesting how that worked out that way too. But also, Jessica, is your casting you're going to have more of a time to cast since this is going up in June? And do you feel good about that?
About having more time to cast
Yeah.
it? Yes, I do feel good about it. I think ultimately the decision to push to June will benefit us in every which way, including the scripts way. And you know, it also allows for us to sort of reach for a bigger budget, but a bigger budget entails bigger stars that will hopefully attract financiers. So the idea is to take some time, 2 months or so, to secure maybe 2 to 3 ideally pieces of talent. I don't know why they call them pieces of talent, they're human beings, but and then go to try to find some money with 2 to 3 names attached to the project. I'm so sorry.
That's okay.
So yes, I feel good about that. And I feel also confused because who knows at this point their schedule for the following year. Nobody that I know. But I guess people are just making sort of commitments, apparently, because everyone wants to sort of get back to work, and everyone's also hoping that by June, at least we'll have if not, you know, I don't know what the world will look like at that point, but at least we'll be sort of adjusted to filming on COVID sets.
And have you have you looked at what the latest sort of phase plans are from Connecticut, and whether or not they are advantageous to you? You know, do they give you any hope in terms of what's going to be allowed in phase 3?
Yeah, I'm not so much. I'm not as tuned in regards to Candlewood and the production into sort of the phases as I am into sort of the guidelines that the SAG, SAG and that the guilds and the you have created. They call it. Does anyone remember what it's called? The white pages or something. They have this whole manual, and that is what I've familiarized myself with, and I've just been hearing a lot and reading a lot about people's experiences who have gone back to work on sets. And you know, there's COVID. You just add in new lines in into the budget for COVID safety officers and so on. But I don't. The Connecticut guidelines. I'll start to get overwhelmed. I think I've about next June, you know, and
I guess if you know, clearly if you're dealing with unionized labor and unionized talent, that's the first place to look, because you should be able to rely on the guidelines at least to come up with a safe working environment, and then to check whether that fits in with what the state will actually allow you to do. But
Right.
yeah, and there's my impression as well is that certainly in this area, there's a lot of talent. So a lot of talented actors who are sitting idle at the moment and really waiting to work. There's also a lot of technical talent as well, which I think maybe this gets a little overlooked, but set dressers, roadies, the multitude of other people who need to get involved in a show. There's a lot of talent around this area, and once these productions kick in, I think you've got a good pool to pull from. I mean, we know of a few on the technical side who have just had legs cut out from under them because if shows aren't being produced.
Yeah.
They don't write. They don't do workshops. They simply just don't work.
Yeah, I know. I think that one of the things I'm most excited about is to sort of get as much of the community and local talent involved as possible.
Mm-hmm.
I'd love to sort of do that in Sherman, especially because Don Lowe, our first selectman, is so excited.
Oh yes, and Don's a great guy. He's very, very supportive of the Playhouse. And as president, it's my main concern is when are we going to get back to anything that's normal, and also what else can we do? What else can we get involved in? So I'll make a shameless appeal that don't forget the Playhouse when you're filming, and we'll do everything we can. If anything you need from us that we can help with as well, just shout. We're there. Well, thanks for that input, Jessica. I think what we'll do now is kind of just open it up because what I'm quite excited about is that we have 3 writers on our show this week. Serendipity or Robin's planning, one or the other, means we have 3 writers on the show, and that notion of where your creativity comes from, and the other side of that, how you are motivating yourself to write, is something that I'm interested in. I'll throw that out there. So how at the moment are you guys motivating yourselves to write? We've touched on it a couple of times, but how do you motivate yourself to write when there's no there's no demand for your writing at the moment? I mean, Martin, you've turned something in which is fantastic, but there's no demand necessarily for what you want to produce.
A lot of it is escape for me. It's a marvelous. It's a security blanket. It's a pair of fuzzy slippers and a nice warm hot cup of hot cocoa.
Yeah.
It's something I slide into, and it's an escape from the headlines and all that is disparaging right now. And that's what motivates me. I really kind of it's not ostrich with his head in the sand quite, but it's a little neverland I can go to where I enjoy that little world, that world of writing. That's what does it for me.
Well, that's a nice reminder, because the last thing I think of when I start writing is sort of fuzzy slippers and hot cocoa, because it can be so painful. I think I sort of wake up and early and I'm like, oh fuck, like I'm not working. I need to start creating and doing something. And then I drink as much coffee as possible so that I can feel like I'm in an altered drug state, and then, without actually doing drugs or bad ones. And then I write until I'm so hungry that I feel like I'm gonna maybe pass out. And then my writing day sort of ends. And so it sort of feels more born from like a desperation to get something out, and yet underneath it all, I think I am just trying to escape. And it does make me feel good to finish something, certainly. The process is usually, I like to, I don't know.
Is that it's that approach that you take? We'll call it an approach, but I think that is something you've almost a habit you're in from being under deadlines to to write for a show, which I mean I don't know an incredible amount of that, but the one thing I do know is that it's very highly pressured if you're in an ongoing series to keep churning is the wrong term, but to keep completing scripts for week after week. So do you feel that's sort of conditioned you to work like that, or is this just the way you feel like working?
Yeah, no, it's just the way that I've always seemed to be the most oddly successful at sitting down and writing, is first thing in the morning before there's any people about. Sometimes I light a candle. That's my bit of ritual. Yeah, before the world sort of starts to get me feeling tired or whatever, I just find myself to be, and I suppose also the only personal work I've been able to do in the years of writing on the show is early in the morning before work. So maybe I've been slightly conditioned in that way, but I've always been an anti-morning person who can only work in the mornings. So.
Yeah, that's a bit of a contradiction, yeah.
Problem, but
yes. But,
I miss driving, because that's where I would get my best ideas. I always thought it had something to do with the conscious brain, hopefully, concentrating on the driving and the task at hand, and the subconscious just sort of is free. And I used to choreograph that way. I'd be on the way to rehearsals, and I'd put
yes,
some music
I've driven behind you on the
Absolutely,
highway.
I would
as you do the
choreograph in the
moves.
car.
Yeah, as you sashay across from lane to lane. Yes.
Yeah. Well, except when you get to rehearsal and say, okay, step on the gas pedal,
It doesn't work.
Yeah, but I miss that. I would get great ideas, or a phrase would come to me, or a melody or something, and then I keep a little tiny hand recorder in the car so that I can just record ideas. But I miss that, because where do I have to go?
Well, yes, I think you'd be driving around for no apparent reason. But
I bought a brand new car just before COVID hit.
Yeah, that's right. And Martin, any observations?
Yeah, I'm thinking about something Jessica said, which is I know everything that I've written since I don't want to say November 9th of 2016. I don't want to say that, but basically even before that, probably for 6 or 7 months before that, since then, since 2015, 2016, I don't really want to write anything anymore that's not really personal, number one, and not really political on another level, not spoon feeding somebody or forcing them, to listen to my point of view. But to me, and sounds like you feel the same way, Jessica, the world's on fire to me right now. And before I start writing every day, I usually do the New York Times crossword puzzle or something, which makes me really focus, and it makes me be really present. And when I write now, I just want to, I somehow want to reach people. I want to get people involved. I want to make people there feel like they're not alone. And I want to make people feel that the impossible is possible, and not to give up. It's funny, I find myself quoting Winston Churchill at least 5 times a week, that famous quote about never, 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 never give up. And I wanted to say that to you, Jessica, because your movie's going to get made. If the trick to all of that is finding, and I tell young writers this that I teach and coach and things, which is, it works the same way with plays. All it takes is that one person who says, hey, we really like this and we're going to hang in there, you know, and somebody, you clearly have found those people and you have this script. And when we get back to whatever that new normal is going to be in the end, yeah, that story's still going to be true. It's still going to be honest. And so I'm you know, channeling Winston Churchill, don't give up. It'll happen. It'll come back. And I told Robin this when we met before working on The Irish Curse. When I wrote The Irish Curse, and I don't want to get into what the play's about or anything, but I sent it to over 40 theaters. I had worked in theaters all over the country. And I got turned down by everybody. Everybody said, this isn't a play. My play is about 5 people, 5 guys in a support group. And they taught this, the play starts when they walk in the room, and when their support meeting is over, 90 minutes later, the play's over. And it's political, and it's about male body image. It's about all sorts of things. And I couldn't get anyone to do it, you know? And I finally got tired of being turned down, and I submitted it to the New York Fringe Festival. And I raised the money and produced it myself with 5 actors who, you know, donated their time. And the play got, within a week of it closing at the festival, it got picked up by 2 New York producers, and it took them 5 years to raise the money to do it off Broadway. And there were plenty of times when I wanted to give up, but I never did. It's the civil rights movement thing about keeping your eyes on the prize. Your movie will get made if you just keep being that squeaky wheel and not giving up. So do that.
Thank you for that.
Okay.
I appreciate that, and I appreciate the sort of confidence and push. I think we all need a bit of that at the moment, at least. I don't think I'm alone, and yeah, I'm not prepared to give up. It's the only thing I'm really looking forward to right now. So I'm feeling actually quite positive about it, despite my complaining.
One of the things that we did when we first set this up, Robin and I, when Robin approached me, the notion was way back that this would be a support group. This would be a forum for those in the performing arts who were affected by COVID and by the restrictions, and we were really going through the sort of, oh my God, it's all come to an end. You know, everybody in performing arts is out of work, and no one's ever going to work again. And what are we all going to do? What we found as we've gone along is that the response has become more and more optimistic as far as the arts is concerned, that the arts will find a way, that we don't know what the normal will be. Yeah, but we're unlikely to be returning to theatres, traditional theatres, for quite a while, either because, you know, restrictions will still be in place to keep things from spreading, or, you know, audiences may not feel comfortable squeezing into small spaces to see what's going up on the stage. But, you know, people are still creating. People are still wanting to entertain and to inform and take up the issues of the day. So we will find a way. As I say, I think one of the tragedies is there's a lot of creative people who can create, write, as in have ideas, but there is no outlet necessarily for that at the moment, and that obviously can be very frustrating. And then you've got this whole other side of the industry that simply can't work until those creatives are back in place. But overall, and I think Robin, you'll agree with this, overall it's been an optimistic view.
Yeah, and Steve and I have been chatting about doing a thing I wrote on Zoom, and it'll work. It will work. It's a two-person, it's a two-hander. It will work. There's a lot of stuff that doesn't work on Zoom. There's a lot of theater that probably will never work, but this, you know, may work and may get out there nationally and may get out there worldwide. We don't know, you know. So there's interesting opportunities, even with you know, even with the and I know the Zoom stuff is frustrating. It really is, but I think there's some interesting things that may happen out of that. So
yeah, and we've also you know, we've had, you know, technical people on the show as well, who've expressed optimism about the way that the technology will begin to match the creativity. So at the moment, this is the kind of medium we feel we've got to work with. We've got Zoom, we've got webcasts, you know, that's about it. But the technology is likely to emerge to allow a greater range of performance, stuff that's a bit more immediate, stuff that's a bit more communal to happen. When that's going to happen, I don't know. But you know, if we think about that whole, you know, this has been the story all along. There's always been something which was going to stop a particular form of entertainment or a particular form of creativity, and we've found a way to continue that.
The thing I wanted to say is that just within the last month, I've been approached by 2 organizations who want to take 2 plays of mine, and they said, well, we want to produce them. Do you want them to be Zoom? Do you want to be that? And they gave me this sort of list of 5 choices to make. And interestingly enough, for both of them, I chose to do radio play versions of both of these plays. And I'm really excited about it, because for me, I grew up listening to radio programs, old ones from the 30s and 40s. Our local public radio station played them in the afternoons. And I'm finding I'm having to use all my imagination in translating both of these plays into something that someone will be able to put a pair of headphones on and turn all the lights out, you know, and listen to. So it's funny how we're going back. We can go back in time to learn things to how to face something that's new and different.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
absolutely. And I've been on Facebook today. I was singing the praises of It's a Wonderful Life, the radio play, which we performed at Sherman 5-6 years ago, and you know, really explaining how that's right now that works so well for a school production. Because you can isolate people, you can do it as a on stage or a visual thing, and you can end up with a with a radio performance, with an audio performance as well. So there are all these ways of making things work.
One of the best pieces of theater I've seen in the last 7 months was from Theater Works in Palo Alto, California, and they commissioned some plays very quickly, within weeks, and it was an 1.5-hour presentation, and it was 3 half-hour-long ghost stories that were done on Zoom, and it was a wonderful, wonderful evening.
And again, it's funny you should mention that, because not really in a position to announce it, but I'm talking about it on Facebook now, so maybe this announcement. I am looking to put some ghost stories red ghost stories up around Halloween, and I'm in discussion with some people around that at the moment, because it's something we can do, and it's not something that we would generally do at the Playhouse. But at the moment, we all want to act. We all want to direct. We all want to be rehearsed. We're all doing something. We want to be presenting something, and so we're having to think about ways that we can do that aren't simply trying to do what we do all the time, on here, on Zoom, or because it, as Robin says, not everything fits in this box. So, well, thank you everybody. We've gone a little bit over time, but I think this has been fascinating. It's been another perspective, which I think, Robin, we're getting new perspectives every week. What I would say to anybody who is kind of despairing of the current situation, whether it's COVID, whether it's politics, whether it's the social situation, this too will pass. The arts has never been healthy. The arts has been on its deathbed for thousands of years.
Work of the devil.
Yeah, it's always evolving, and
it's
we
always
will
reinvented itself.
Exactly.
It always has. It continues to reinvent itself, and I thought that was great what Marty said about the radio shows going back. I mean, we go forward and we stretch new ways, but we always go back and dip back into that bucket and say, wow, this is really neat. This was inventive in its time.
Yeah, it's Brad. Things we grew up with, what they taught us at college, with theater classes, which is when people sat in caves in front of a fire telling stories. And in the end, that's what it's all about ultimately, whether it's lantern shows or what. It's about telling a story.
Yeah, absolutely. And we just hope that these shows that Robin and I are hosting, one will are of interest, and of interest to the people who we have as guests, and we definitely get a lot of interesting guests, and you guys are three of them, but also give hope, give a certain amount of hope, again, to the guests who are on here, to realize that even though you are sitting in your bedroom, and the furthest you go is to take the dog for a walk, or look out of the window, that you're not actually alone, and that certainly the creative arts very much supports its community. I think that's been a truism that we've definitely seen. So thank you very much, everybody. It's been an absolute pleasure. We'll be back again next week at 7:30, same time next week. What we've said to everybody, all our guests that we've had on, we've said, please come back. Either come back to see what else is going on in the show as a viewer. We'll be posting these shows up on the Showman Players Facebook page, and even come back as guests, because we were starting to have a few people back in the next few weeks. See how things have gone, see how things have changed for them, see how things are developing, and what new news we can hear. So again, thank you so much. Thank you, Brad. Thank you, Jessica. Thank you, Martin. And thank you, Robin. It's time for us all to say goodbye. Say goodbye, Robin.
Goodbye, Robin.
Okay, and take care, everybody. And thank you to everybody watching on Facebook. We'll see you again next week. Thank you very much. Bye-bye now.